Hello everyone and welcome to today's Founder Stories hosted by Triffin. I'm Tash Courtney-Smith and I'm so excited to welcome our guest today. We're joined by Sophie from Klira Skin, who is going to be sharing her incredible story about building a business with a fellow mum from the school gates and turn it into a phenomenal success, and how Triffin has helped her on that journey. Welcome, Sophie. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So let's kick off with the story, the school gate story.
The school gate story. Well, I have a very dear friend called Dr. Emma Craythorne, who is also an amazing consultant dermatologist. And she had her third child at the same time I had my first child. So we were mum friends for many years. And obviously when you have a dermatologist that's your friend, you chat about skincare.
Yeah.
And she had this idea for a long time about creating a prescriptive skincare business that did a better job, better formulations than what was already available on the market. And at the same time, I was really fascinated that there was this level of skincare available out there, but that not everybody could access unless you were lucky enough to just see someone like Emma in her practice. And so in 2022, I quit my job in an advertising agency where I'd been for 20 years, and we went into business together, and Klira was launched.
It's not very long ago, is it? 2022. It seems very, very recent, and you've had a phenomenal 3 years, which we're going to come on to. But talk about coming into the brand world from a background that's nothing, not, you were working with brands in advertising, but you hadn't run your own business before?
No, not at all. So Emma and I have been an amazing team, actually, because obviously Emma, the dermatologist, so the formulations, the skin analysis that we do, she is totally in charge of that. And then for me, it was about building the brand, which I knew how to do very well. But then, of course, I had to build the business underneath that as well. I've learned so much in the past 3 years. I mean, the type of business we were obviously on day one to where we are now is very different. I think the bit that was most alien to me was the financials, absolutely, which is why it's been so amazing being with Triffin. Yeah. And I was so lucky that another mum friend, Fiona, founder of Nessa, introduced me actually to Triffin a couple of years into our journey.
So let's go back to day one of the business. And you did decide to raise investment. At what point did you raise? Before, after? Just talk us through that first round.
So we had to raise to start because bespoke skincare business is not a simple thing to get off the ground.
Yeah.
And in fact, if I'd have known quite how big some of the hills are, we would have to climb.
You wouldn't have done it?
I would have done it, no. I'm so happy I did it. But there have been so many barriers to get around.
Yeah.
So you have the bespoke skincare product, which is made to order. There are obviously many different formulations that we send out. So we found a partner to work with to do that initially. Then we also had to set up the service, which is really the consulting and the e-prescribing side of it, which is quite different to anything else that exists at the moment either. So you come to Klira Skin, you take a 51-question test. So it's really in-depth. It's based on a global scientific study of the skin. And then our algorithm tells you which one of 12 skin sizes, we call it, that you fit into.
Yeah.
So this is a really multi-dimensional view of the skin. You might have dry skin, yes, but you might also be rosacea prone or get some adult acne spots or, whatever. People have a multitude of things that they want to treat with the skin. So we had to set all that up. We had to have our derm team in place. We had to be organised from a regulatory point of view. So yes, we needed money from the get-go. So our first round was some friends and family, and then we raised with a VC.
Okay, and how did you find that very first round?
I think it was harder than I expected to raise the money. I think, again, I was also a bit naive about that, to be honest. We have this brilliant idea, and so up we rocked with our pitch deck. Ultimately, the VC that invested in us was through a connection of mine, somebody that I'd worked with for many years, introduced me to a friend. And one theme, actually, because we've raised 3 times in 3 years, is that ultimately the people we've partnered with, there's been some kind of personal connection, which I think on reflection also makes sense, because I didn't appreciate this at the time. With an early stage business, they're buying you.
Yeah.
So many people have an exciting business idea, but can you keep going when it gets really tough? And can you get around all of the obstacles it'll throw at you? I think it's really, they're sizing you up as a as a person. So somebody vouching for you, I think, is what's also really helped us through.
And when we were discussing before we came on air, you were talking about how your background doing pitches in Adland, as it's known, actually really helped you on the fundraising process. Can you share some of that? Because I know a lot of the brands watching will be fundraising or thinking about fundraising.
Yeah.
What did you take from Adland into that landscape?
Oh, well, you've got to tell your story. What's the problem that you're trying to solve? Explaining your big idea in a very simple way and an exciting way. That was my job, to try and, make exciting ideas. So I think all of that really helped. Having said that, one bit of advice I would certainly give anyone would be to get other people to look at your deck, because you're so involved in your idea. I think it's quite hard sometimes to know, even with that experience, how clearly you're explaining yourself, especially when you're doing something a bit different, or like us as female founders selling skincare, talking to a lot of men about it, and they don't think about skincare as much as we do, even though they should. So I think get someone to look at your deck for you and pitch doctor it and check you're doing that really as well as you can.
Brilliant. So we're 3 years on. You did your first round, friends and family. There's since been 2 further rounds. Can you just summarise the broad structure of those rounds and what their purpose was?
Yeah. So I think, gosh, the Klira journey has been so fast. And as I said, not a simple one to launch and execute and get off the ground. So after our first raise, we then needed to raise again. And then that was one that happened quite organically. So that was through a private investor who had recently exited their own business.
Yeah.
They'd done an amazing exit, and it was a subscription business. And they were really excited about the idea of doing skincare by subscription. So we raised with them. And then finally, we've gone up another level really in terms of what we want to raise in our ambitions. I think we started to really get the wind in our sails in the second half of last year.
Yeah.
So now it's quite a different purpose. We are wanting to bring production in-house. We will be bringing production in-house, global expansion. And so for that kind of a raise, we went out to market again. And actually, it was another personal connection through a family office, and someone there had been prescribed Klira by their dermatologist. And they said, this is the most fantastic thing. This is a brilliant business. Why can't I get it where I live, which is abroad? And so the conversation there started again.
Brilliant. So let's talk about Triffin and how Triffin played into these raises, because obviously when you're doing a raise, you have to produce a financial model, know all your numbers. I mean, everyone's seen people pitching in Dragon's Den and not knowing their numbers. And actually, I work with a lot of brand founders, and it's quite easy for a brand founder to not really know their numbers, because they're often a creative person who's come in to creating a product out of a need or spotting a market gap or out of a passion.
Yeah.
So how sort of financially numerate were you in terms of the finances of a business, particularly the finances of a business that's fundraising, and how did Triffin help you on that?
I mean, in truth, not really at all literate. I had, in my old role in Adland, I did about ROI, so I could make my way around a spreadsheet a bit. But I think it's true that you don't know what you don't know sometimes. So what are the numbers an investor would be looking for? I hadn't considered things like incredibly basic things like your unit economics, or how that then is going to relate to cost per acquisition versus average lifetime value. These are the
basics. These are seen of basic things, but I think 8 years ago in e-commerce, no one had really considered these things, and now people have to learn them as they go. So
well, I mean, I didn't know, and I didn't know what I didn't know. So I think coming to Triffin about a year into the business was an absolute lifesaver, and also for cash flow, because as you know, we've done the 3 raises, we've had quite fast but unpredictable growth. So keeping an eye on cash, it's not just about the support with pitching and the quality of management counts and financial literacy that I can now present with, thanks to Ian at Triffin, my tutor. But it's also that cash flow management. And I think if an investor can see that you understand that, you're taking it very seriously, well, that's a big tick for them, definitely.
And when you're presenting to investors and you're running through things like your unit economics, the cash flow management, product level margins, I presume with huge confidence, thanks to the Triffin team, how does that impact the way they see you? Can you read it in their faces immediately that they're thinking, wow, she really knows her numbers?
I don't know if they're thinking, wow, but I think that it's just reassurance and confidence. Actually, one of our investors said to me today, we feel totally confident with you guys. And these are investors who I'd introduced to Triffin in a board meeting because I wanted them to see the level of reporting and live reporting that we're getting through that system as a business. And they were really impressed. But we quite quickly gone into a new channel, for example. 6 months in, we expanded out of just doing the D2C into Pro channel. And I've never been a B2B marketer, so that was all completely new to me. And then also speaking to it being specifically to medical professionals, they think so differently, how you would communicate to a doctor to other audiences. So that's been a really, really big learning curve as well.
And how have people seen the product in terms of how it is disrupting the way you get a skincare product that's perfect for your own skin?
Well, I will say on that front, the Pro channel has been amazing for us. And I think that's partly because they completely understand why the formulations are so special. Compounding pharmacies are quite rare in the UK, and this is the kind of business that creates a cream like this that's totally bespoke and made to order. It doesn't just exist in skincare, HRT, hair loss treatments, things like that as well. Can be accessed in this way. But it's very small, and medical professionals can sometimes worry that those formulas are then also not necessarily tested out. So it's quite a high maintenance process to go through with a patient. Whereas with Klira, you have the best of both worlds because they're tried and tested to some degree. They're out there being proven in market all of the time, but your client is still getting something that is very bespoke and fresh for them.
Okay, so you've mentioned as well that not knowing everything meant you took risks that otherwise you wouldn't have taken, that have paid off.
Well, what's an example there? I think the Pro channel is definitely something that I wouldn't have known how to navigate, and that has then ended up being really one of the big growth drivers of the business and a way to grow more exponentially than perhaps is possible through consumer.
And when you originally came up with the business, was it going to be an entirely consumer brand?
Yeah. I mean, I think the other thing that has been surprising is I remember talking to Emma about the formulas and the number of formulas and how the personalisation would be done. And it was certainly my naivety on the actual formulation process that I just, I'm like, brilliant, we can have this many, no problem. And then it's only, or small things like the personalisation on the labels of every single bottle. I think it's sometimes those smaller operational things that trip you up when you think it will be something very big that gets you, but it's not. It's little details that you have to get right.
Is it not easy to do personalised labels? See, I'm saying that as someone who totally doesn't know. You just imagine there's a button somewhere that you press, but that's probably how you were at the beginning.
Exactly. Yeah.
So lessons about money. What are some of the hardest things that you've learned along the way about money, cash flow?
Well, I think that it's just the numbers and finances, it's an exact science in the end. I know what I'm saying sounds totally obvious, but what you have or that you don't have. And I think having somebody in the business or Triffin, who it's been for us, who can deliver that truth to you in a very unemotional, but a supportive way. But, it's just total reality on how things are going. You really need that sense check, because I think otherwise you can be so run away, especially if you don't love the numbers or it's not something that comes naturally to you. It can just go to the bottom of your to-do list, kind of dealing with that while you're getting on with running the business. But I guess the biggest thing that I've learned is that you just have to be on top of that every single day. It's the top of your to-do list every single day.
And how do you see the difference between marketing metrics and then the financial metrics? Because I know it's very easy from a marketing point of view to see a good picture, like we've had a lot of impressions and reach and clicks and traffic, sort of soft metrics. And what I love about working with Triffin alongside the marketing metrics is it does bring the actual discipline of finance as well. Like in a way, it doesn't really matter what happens in marketing.
Yeah.
When you're looking at the P&L from that sort of absolute point of view you've just talked about.
Yeah, cash is king, as they say.
How do you balance those two views of the business?
Well, I think the marketing metrics are obviously about performance and efficiency and also potential. Whereas the financial metrics are about what have you got and what can you afford to do.
Yeah.
So I do think of them as really quite different things. Obviously, then you can decide if you want to, if you've got. If the marketing is going really well and your ROI is looking great, can you put more money into that? Well, it might make sense to, but only if you've got the money to put in.
Yes.
And that's, I guess, a bit of what I mean about hard truths as well, that you need to be very real about when you're looking at the numbers.
So let's discuss your team, because I know one thing that people who watch the Founder Stories love to hear is how is the perfect D2C brand structured? And there probably isn't a perfect structure, but can you talk us through your team structure, how it's grown, who you have in what roles, and whether or not you have an internal finance person?
Yeah. So, well, we don't have an internal finance person. Triffin have just been, it's such a brilliant platform. And then the half an hour I get every week with Ian is just a fantastic opportunity for me to speak to somebody and understand what's going on, but also I'll ask broader questions about as well, to be honest.
Everyone loves talking to Ian and hearing how all the other brands are doing, what the benchmarks are.
I feel like he's my counsellor sometimes. But no, I mean, that really is a brilliant thing to have that grown-up view from the finance point of view, which is the most important one at the end. But no, when we started hiring customer service, I mean, I remember when I was doing the customer service emails, so customer service hire, social media marketing hire, those kind of organic channels and the customer touch points. Then we started to bring in, I think marketing and customer service have really been the two areas we've invested in the most. We've just brought in our first operations manager really recently. And all these people have been or are brilliant midweight individuals. So they're not so junior that they need a huge amount of support from me. They can get on with things. And I think that's really important in terms of hiring the level, but they're also not managers that are looking for someone to manage, because obviously there's not really anyone to manage them. Everyone just needs to be doing everything. So yes, we have a brilliant kind of midweight team. And then I've just hired our first senior hire, which will be a head of marketing. And I've also hired a head of pharmacy because we're setting up our pharmacy. So the business, that will change the shape of the business as well. Now we're taking on our own production capability too.
And on the marketing side of the business, which is often a very large cost for most brands, do you have agencies as well, or is everything in-house?
We do all of our creative in-house, which I think for a premium beauty brand is important. I mean, I say that having come from a creative agency, but we tried working with a couple of creative agencies, but I think your brand identity is so important. It has to look absolutely brilliant. And so I feel in the end, we're best to decide that. And we've hired a designer actually. So a full-time designer, that's been really changed the output. But then we went. And
did the output change once you had the creative team in terms of volume, quality?
Both, because you can optimize so quickly and so effectively and be very reactive. It's so much more efficient. I think it certainly has been for us anyway to have that designer in-house. But then we work with a media agency. So I do have help there with all of my metric reporting, and then a PR agency as well.
And in terms of your first senior hire being head of marketing, why did you go for head of marketing? Because you've mentioned you've got a midweight team. Yeah. Why did you? I'm interested in the thinking around head of marketing as the first senior hire.
I think it's because I feel like I need somebody in the business who is driving forward the month-to-month plan, so that I can be more focused than I'm able to be now on the 2-year plan and making sure that those longer-term strategic initiatives are being put in place now so that we're set to grow in the future, be that new product development or expansion in whatever way, so I can focus more on those things. That's been one of the hardest things I've found as a founder, to try not to be too focused on the day-to-day number and focus on the longer-term trends of the numbers.
And as your role, I suppose, like all founders, has shifted from doing everything across the business, particularly across marketing. How do you spend your time now as the business has grown and matured and you're bringing in a capable team behind you?
Yeah. It's funny, isn't
Or are
it?
you still doing everything?
No, I'm not. I do. The team are absolutely brilliant, and increasingly self-sufficient.
Yeah.
I do think part of the reason for that senior hire is because I think you reach a point, as I probably have now, where I can't give everybody the support that they need in doing their roles. There's, so we're 12 now. So then if everyone's one-to-ones and catch-ups and things, you can't do it. And that's not fair on people, because people are looking to learn and grow their own career as well. So I think that's why I know it's also the time to bring in that senior hire so that they have that support. So what am I doing more of? But focusing on the longer term things that will make sure that, if I can leave someone to get on with the plan that I know we can deliver in the next 6 months, I can be focused on the 6 months and year after that and making sure that everything is in place for that long-term growth to be there.
So let's talk about the long-term plans, because it's a brand that's come in, 2022. It's not like you were in the era of early D2C brands who to some extent had, a nice... They were in the right place at the right time to get a lot of growth. But you've come in 2022. You have disrupted a niche in the marketplace. You've grown really fast. You've had 3 rounds of investment. What are the long-term plans? What's coming next for you guys?
The most important activity that we're working on at the moment is the Klira pharmacy, the Klira labs, so that we'll make our own product and be in control of our production. I think we're really excited about the optimizations we can make in doing that for the customer experience as well, but also talking about financial fundamentals. It will mean that we can be a profitable business. So that's absolute number one.
Bringing production in-house will have that much of an impact on the business.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's the number one priority, because then you've got independence about how you're acting going forward as well. Secondly, we have exciting new products in the pipeline as well. We have an amazing launch coming in September, so very excited to see that hit the market.
Whenever someone says they've got a launch new product, I always want to say, what is it? But you probably can't say, can you?
No, I can't say, but it's another market-leading product.
Okay.
So we're really excited to launch that. And then the final thing will be international expansion, which we're looking at, which we're still looking at different markets at the moment, because it all depends on the regulatory side of things for us. Again, it's that kind of extra challenge. You can't just start throwing the doors open. You really have to think about the regulatory backdrop in the country and how you'll deliver the product.
And you've built the brand as a subscription first brand, which is obviously so important for things like unit economics and perfectly lends itself to a product like yours. How has the subscription side of the business grown, and where do you see that going to in terms of how many subscribers you'd ultimately like? I mean, I know brands with, some of them have a few thousand subscribers and are really happy. Others have hundreds of thousands of subscribers.
Yeah. Well, we are targeting the top 5% of skincare spenders. So, we don't need hundreds of thousands of subscribers. And I wouldn't say no if they came knocking at our door. But the model is more certainly more of a premium one. However, we could only be a subscription business because part of the ethos of Klira is to be honest with people about what will work and what can make a real change in their skin. And so that means applying the right skincare for you every single day. Also and that's true of any formulation, but then with Klira specifically, your treatment is going to evolve over time and with seasons or hormonal changes or whatever over time. So you're on a long-term journey towards the healthiest skin you can possibly have with us. So we want to change the way people think and buy about skincare so that they get real results and they get fewer half-empty bottles in their bathroom cabinet that are a waste.
Oh, yes, because yours also has zero waste. Is that right?
Zero waste, yeah. You finish it at the end of the month and there's just absolutely nothing in the bottom, and it's really pleasing. I love that about it. And then you just screw your new cartridge in, which has all been freshly made for you. You've got it in the lab within 48 hours of it being mixed. So no degradation of actives. It's a really exceptionally effective and beautiful product.
And as you grow for those goals of bringing manufacturing house, internationalization, what role will Triffin have?
I think that Triffin is going to be so important as we go through in terms of live cash flow management on all of those projects, reporting optimizations on margin and unit costs. That I have all of that data from the system, and those will be the two big things to be watching during the next 6 months.
And do you think you would have got to that data yourself if?
Like I said at the beginning, I guess I'd have had to eventually, but no, I didn't. I did not know about these metrics until we started working together, and now they are the foundation of the business. And I'm sure why I have been able to have good conversations with investors as well.
So bring it back to the school gates scenario. I mean, you guys must have had a big plan to go into this together, but has it gone better than expected, worse than expected, or is it a bit of both?
Oh, in some ways it's a bit of both, because as also, I think anyone that's done a startup will know, it goes great and it's great, and then it doesn't go great and it's really, horrible. But no, when I look at where we are now and feeling the business itself become more robust, and I know that we've delivered a product and brand that we're incredibly proud of, and it does live out what we wanted to put out into the world. So no, I think we're both absolutely delighted with it, and so happy that more people are now getting to know it and try it for themselves.
And actually, just in case there's women watching this, which I'm sure there will be, let's just talk about the skincare routine. Because do you use the product?
I do use it, I do.
Because your skin looks amazing. I have to say, I'm sitting here talking to you and thinking your skin does look really, really amazing. I'm one of these people who has a lot of products and just switches between them. And you said, don't do that. That's not good for your skin. Why not?
Well, because anything you're applying to your skin to try and with a goal of whatever it is to moisturize your skin or reduce pigmentation, whatever it is that you're hoping it will do, it can only do it if you apply it every single day over a long period of time, because cells don't change their behavior overnight. You can moisturize really well. And there's a lot of the really, nice big brand expensive creams, I know the kind of thing I'm talking about, that are great moisturizers.
Yeah.
But for an active change in the skin, cellular change is possible, and even reverse aging is possible, but you have to apply the ingredients every day over years.
So the idea that one product is going to change your life overnight is not? No,
that's absolutely a lie.
Okay.
I'm sorry. But there are things that can do it over the long term and have a really profound effect in the skin in the end.
Brilliant. So before we wrap up, what's your 3 bits of advice for people watching today and thinking, how can they do what Sophie's done? How can they do what Klira Skin has done?
Well, I think number one would be just to never give up when you hit obstacles. Sometimes I think about, lying in bed at night on certain days and thinking, am I mad now to keep going? But you do just keep going and find your ways around the problems. Number 2, you absolutely have to have your financials in order. Otherwise, you don't even know if you have a great business. And having that realism of what money you've got will free you to not be scared about it, and then commit to your business and do all those things.
So use Tryfin for that.
Absolutely use Tryfin. They're amazing. And then my 3rd bit of advice would be hire the best people you can. And if you hire one great person, ask them who they know that are brilliant, because personal, recommendations and everything is brilliant. And in the end, it's the team that you build around you that will decide if you can scale successfully or not, I think.
Brilliant. Well, Sophie, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to go and get myself Klira, obviously, as I'm sure everyone who's watching will. Thank you so much for joining us. It's fantastic to hear your story.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.